The inheritance lawyer's words hung in the air like a sentence Olivia Bennett couldn't quite process. She now owned half of a coastal cottage in Maine with a complete stranger named Warren Thorne. Olivia stared at the legal documents spread across the mahogany desk, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to make sense of what she was hearing. Her great-aunt Margaret, whom she'd visited every summer as a child, had passed away 3 months ago, and Olivia had expected maybe some jewelry or perhaps a small sum of money. Not this. "I don't understand," Olivia said, pushing a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear. "Who is Warren Thorne? Why would Aunt Margaret leave her cottage to both of us?" The lawyer, a stern woman in her 60s named Mrs. Patterson, adjusted her reading glasses. "According to the will, Warren Thorne is the grandson of Margaret's late husband's best friend. The will specifically states that you and Mr. Thorne must jointly inherit the property. There's a clause that neither of you can sell your half without the other's consent for 1 full year. Additionally, you're both required to spend at least 2 weeks at the property together within the first 3 months of inheriting it, or the cottage will be donated to charity." Olivia leaned back in the leather chair, her mind racing. She was a 26-year-old landscape designer in Boston, barely making ends meet in her tiny studio apartment. A cottage in Maine sounded like a dream, but sharing it with a stranger, that sounded like a nightmare. "When do I meet this Warren Thorne?" Olivia asked. "He's actually waiting in the conference room down the hall. He flew in from New York this morning." Olivia's stomach flipped. "He's here. Now, would you like me to introduce you?" Taking a deep breath, Olivia nodded. She followed Mrs. Patterson down a corridor lined with oil paintings of stern-looking men in suits. When they reached the conference room, Mrs. Patterson opened the door, and Olivia's breath caught. Standing by the window, silhouetted against the afternoon light, was a man who looked like he'd walked out of a magazine. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that was slightly windswept and a strong jawline that could cut glass. He wore an expensive navy suit that fit him perfectly, and when he turned to face her, his blue-gray eyes met hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. "Warren Thorne, this is Olivia Bennett," Mrs. Patterson said. Warren crossed the room in 3 long strides and extended his hand. "Miss Bennett." His handshake was firm and warm. Olivia found herself momentarily speechless, which was unlike her. "Mr. Thorne," she managed, "please call me Warren." His voice was deep and smooth, with just a hint of something she couldn't quite place. Authority, maybe. Or confidence that came from years of getting what he wanted. "Then call me Olivia." Mrs. Patterson excused herself, leaving them alone in the conference room. An awkward silence settled between them. Warren spoke first. "I have to admit, this whole situation is as surprising to me as it probably is to you. I met your great-aunt Margaret only a handful of times when I was a kid. My grandfather and her late husband were Korean War veterans who served together. They stayed close until they both passed." Olivia nodded, processing this information. "Aunt Margaret never mentioned your family to me. Did you know about the cottage?" "I knew it existed. My grandfather used to tell stories about visiting there in the summers. But I had no idea Margaret would leave it to me, let alone that I'd be sharing it with someone." He paused, studying her face. "Look, I know this is strange, but we're bound by the terms of the will. 2 weeks at the cottage together, and then we can figure out what to do with the property." 2 weeks, Olivia repeated. The thought of spending 2 weeks alone with this intimidating stranger made her nervous. But the alternative was losing the inheritance entirely, and she suspected the cottage was worth a significant amount of money. Money she desperately needed to finally open her own landscape design firm. I've already cleared my schedule for the last 2 weeks of May, Warren said. If that works for you. May, Olivia calculated quickly. That was only 3 weeks away. I suppose I can arrange it. I have a few projects wrapping up, but I should be able to get away. Warren pulled out his phone. Give me your number. I'll send you the details once I've had a chance to visit the property and make sure it's habitable, according to Mrs. Patterson. It's been sitting empty since Margaret moved to the nursing home 2 years ago. They exchanged numbers, and Olivia tried to ignore the flutter in her stomach when his fingers brushed hers as he handed back her phone. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. The fact that Warren Thorne looked like he belonged on the cover of a romance novel was irrelevant. As Olivia rode the train back to Boston that evening, she couldn't stop thinking about the cottage and its other owner. She pulled up Warren Thorne on her phone and felt her eyes widen. He was the founder and CEO of Thorne Industries, a real estate development company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. At 31, he was one of the youngest self-made millionaires in New York. Articles described him as brilliant, ruthless in business, and notoriously private about his personal life. What would a man like that want with a small cottage in Maine? He probably owned penthouses and vacation homes all over the world. The inheritance must be pocket change to him. 3 weeks later, Olivia found herself driving up the winding coastal road toward Seabrook Cove, Maine. Her ancient Honda struggled with the hills, making concerning noises that suggested it might not survive the return journey. The GPS indicated she was 10 minutes from the cottage, and with each passing mile, the scenery became more breathtaking. Towering pines gave way to glimpses of the Atlantic Ocean, its waters gray-blue and dotted with whitecaps. When she finally turned onto Lighthouse Road, her breath caught. The cottage sat on a small bluff overlooking the ocean, surrounded by wild roses and beach grass that swayed in the salt-tinged breeze. It was larger than she'd imagined, a charming Cape Cod-style home with weathered shingles and white trim. A stone path led from the driveway to the front door, and she could hear the distant crash of waves against rocks. A sleek black Mercedes was already parked in the driveway. Warren was here. Olivia grabbed her duffel bag from the trunk and made her way to the front door. Before she could knock, it swung open and Warren stood there in jeans and a gray Henley that showed off his muscular build. He looked different without the suit, more approachable but no less attractive. "You found it," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "Your directions were good." Olivia walked into the cottage and immediately fell in love. The interior was cozy and bright, with exposed wooden beams, a stone fireplace, and large windows that framed the ocean view. The furniture was a mix of comfortable sofas and antique pieces that gave the place character. "Warren, this is beautiful." "It really is," he agreed, and she heard genuine warmth in his voice. "I had a cleaning service come through last week, and I've been here since yesterday making sure everything works. The plumbing needed some attention, but we're all set now." Olivia set down her bag and walked to the window. The view was spectacular. She could see a small private beach below the bluff, accessible by a wooden staircase that zigzagged down the rocky cliff face. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Warren said from behind her. "I took the one on the left. You can choose between the master and the guest room." She turned to face him. "The master should be yours. You got here first. I'm not going to take the biggest room just because I arrived a day early. Besides, you're Margaret's actual family. It seems right that you have it." His consideration surprised her. Everything she'd read about Warren Thorne suggested he was cutthroat and demanding. This man offering her the master bedroom seemed like someone else entirely. "Thank you," she said softly. Warren showed her around the cottage. Besides the 3 bedrooms upstairs, There was a spacious kitchen with a breakfast nook, a dining room, a living room with the fireplace, and a screened-in porch that ran the length of the back of the house. The master bedroom had an en-suite bathroom with a clawfoot tub that looked original to the house. "I stocked the kitchen with basics," Warren said as they came back downstairs. "But we should probably make a run to the grocery store in town. There's a decent market about 15 minutes from here." "We can take my car," Olivia offered. Warren glanced out the window at her Honda, which was making a ticking sound even though the engine was off. "No offense, but I think my car will make the round trip more reliably." Olivia laughed despite herself. "Fair point. That thing barely made it here." They drove into Seabrook Cove, a picturesque fishing village with a main street lined with boutiques, galleries, and restaurants. The grocery store was small but well-stocked, and Olivia found herself relaxing as she and Warren navigated the aisles together. He had good taste, she noticed, picking out fresh vegetables, quality cuts of meat, and artisan bread from the bakery section. "You cook?" she asked, watching him select herbs with the careful attention of someone who knew what they were doing. "I do, actually. It's one of the few things that helps me unwind. I'm decent. Nothing fancy, but I can follow a recipe." Warren grabbed a bottle of wine. "How about I make dinner tonight? Consider it a welcome gesture." "I won't say no to that." Back at the cottage, Olivia unpacked while Warren worked in the kitchen. She could hear him moving around downstairs, the sound of chopping and the occasional clatter of pans. The master bedroom was lovely, with a 4-poster bed covered in a white quilt and more windows overlooking the ocean. She found herself thinking that Aunt Margaret must have been very happy here. When she came downstairs an hour later, having changed into comfortable leggings and a soft sweater, the cottage smelled incredible. Warren was at the stove, stirring something that made her mouth water. "Lemon chicken with roasted vegetables," he announced, "and I found some fresh rolls in the bread box." They ate on the screened porch as the sun began to set over the ocean. The food was delicious, and Olivia told him so. "My grandmother taught me," Warren said, pouring them both more wine. "She insisted that everyone should know how to cook a proper meal, said it was a life skill as important as any business degree." "She sounds wise." She was. Warren's expression grew distant. "She passed away 5 years ago. I think she would have liked this place." They talked as the sky turned from blue to pink to deep purple. Olivia learned that Warren had grown up in a middle-class family in upstate New York, that he'd worked construction jobs to pay for college, and that he'd started his company with a single property renovation that he'd done mostly by himself. His success hadn't come from privilege, but from relentless hard work, and a vision for transforming neglected buildings into beautiful spaces. In turn, Olivia told him about her childhood summers with Aunt Margaret, about her love for gardens and outdoor spaces, and about her dream of opening her own firm. She admitted that she was barely scraping by, taking whatever freelance projects she could find while working part-time at a garden center. "Why not start your own company now?" Warren asked. "Money, or lack thereof. I'd need capital for equipment, insurance, marketing." "I've been saving, but it's slow going when rent in Boston eats up most of my paycheck." Warren was quiet for a moment, and Olivia worried she'd said too much. The last thing she wanted was for this millionaire to think she was fishing for help. "I think you should do it," he said finally. "From what you've described, you have the skills and the passion. That's more than most people can say." His words warmed her more than the wine. "Thank you. That means a lot." The next few days fell into an easy rhythm. They would wake up early, have breakfast together, and then spend the days exploring the property and the surrounding area. Warren proved to be surprisingly good company. He was intelligent and funny, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He also noticed things, little details that most people would miss. When they walked down to the beach, he pointed out the way the light hit the water at different times of day. When they hiked the coastal trail, he identified the various trees and plants, admitting that he'd spent the previous evening reading about the local flora because he knew she'd appreciate it. Olivia found herself watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. The way he moved with easy confidence, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way he rolled up his sleeves when he was working on something, revealing strong forearms. She was attracted to him. There was no denying it. But she kept reminding herself that this was temporary. In less than 2 weeks, they'd go back to their separate lives. One afternoon, they discovered that part of the garden behind the cottage had been Margaret's pride and joy, but was now overgrown. Olivia couldn't help herself. She spent hours clearing weeds and pruning back the roses, revealing the bones of what had once been a beautiful seaside garden. Warren helped without being asked, following her directions as they worked side by side in the warm May sunshine. He was strong, making quick work of the heavy lifting, but he was also surprisingly gentle when handling the more delicate plants. "You're good at this," Olivia said, watching him carefully transplant a cluster of wild lupines. "I'm following your lead," Warren replied. "But I have to admit, there's something satisfying about working with your hands like this. Most of my days are spent in meetings or staring at spreadsheets." "You enjoy it. Running your company?" Warren sat back on his heels, considering the question. "I love the creative side, the design and renovation process. The business side is necessary, but it's not what drives me. I got into real estate because I wanted to transform spaces, to take something forgotten and make it beautiful again." He gestured at the cottage. "Like this place. It would be a crime to let it fall into disrepair. Is that why you haven't pushed to sell it?" "Partly. Also because I can tell it means something to you. Your face when you first walked in, it was like watching someone come home." Olivia's heart squeezed. She hadn't expected him to be so perceptive or so considerate. "It does feel like home," she admitted. "I have so many happy memories here. Aunt Margaret used to let me help in the garden. She taught me the names of all the flowers, showed me how to deadhead roses and when to plant bulbs for spring. I think she's the reason I became a landscape designer." "Then we need to honor that," Warren said firmly. "Whatever we decide to do with this place, we should make sure the garden thrives." That evening they cooked dinner together for the first time. Olivia made her grandmother's pasta recipe while Warren handled the salad and garlic bread. They moved around the kitchen with surprising ease, anticipating each other's movements, laughing when they reached for the same utensil. After dinner, Warren suggested they light a fire in the fireplace. The night had turned cool, and the sound of the crackling wood mixed with the distant ocean created a cozy atmosphere. They sat on the sofa with mugs of tea, and Olivia felt more content than she had in years. "Can I ask you something?" Warren said, his voice quiet in the firelit room. "Of course." "Why landscape design? I mean, I understand the connection to your aunt, but what is it about the work that calls to you?" Olivia thought about it. "I love creating spaces where people can find peace. Everyone's so busy and stressed these days. But a beautiful garden, a well-designed outdoor space, it gives people a place to breathe, to remember that there's more to life than deadlines and obligations." She paused. "Does that sound silly?" "Not at all. It sounds like you understand something important that most people miss." Warren set down his mug and turned to face her more fully. "I think we might be more alike than I initially thought. We're both trying to create beauty in our own ways." The way he was looking at her made Olivia's pulse quicken. There was something in his eyes, an intensity that went beyond friendly conversation. She suddenly became aware of how close they were sitting, how the firelight cast shadows across his handsome face. "Warren," she started, not sure what she was going to say. But he leaned forward, his hand coming up to gently cup her cheek. "Tell me if this is a bad idea," he murmured. Olivia knew she should pull away. Getting involved with Warren was complicated. They were business partners in a sense. They'd only known each other for a week. There were a dozen reasons why kissing him would be a mistake, but when his lips met hers, all those reasons evaporated. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was giving her time to change her mind. But when Olivia responded, her hand sliding up to his shoulder, Warren deepened the kiss. His other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, and Olivia felt like she was falling. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Warren rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you walked into that conference room," he confessed. "Really?" Olivia's voice came out breathless. "Really? You looked so determined and a little scared, and I thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen." He pulled back to look at her properly. "But I need you to know I'm not playing games here. If we do this, if we go down this road, I'm all in. That's how I do everything in my life." The seriousness in his voice made her heart race. "I don't do casual either," she said, "and this scares me. We barely know each other." "Then let's get to know each other. Really know each other. We have a week left here. No distractions, no outside world. Just us." Olivia knew it was crazy. She knew she was probably setting herself up for heartbreak, but looking into Warren's eyes, feeling the warmth of his arms around her, she couldn't bring herself to care. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's try." They stayed up talking until nearly 2 in the morning, sharing stories and secrets and dreams. Warren told her about the pressure of running a company, about the loneliness that came with success, about how he dated but never found anyone who saw him as more than his bank account. Olivia opened up about her own struggles, about the fear that she'd never achieve her dreams, about the relationships that had failed because men couldn't handle her ambition. When they finally went to their separate bedrooms, Olivia lay awake for a long time, her fingers touching her lips where Warren had kissed her. She was falling for him. Maybe she'd already fallen. The next morning, something had shifted between them. The awareness was still there, the attraction crackling in the air, but there was also a new tenderness. Warren made her coffee exactly how she liked it without asking. Olivia found herself unconsciously touching his arm when she laughed at his jokes. They held hands while walking on the beach, their fingers intertwined as waves crashed around their bare feet. That afternoon, while exploring a closet upstairs, Olivia found a box labeled Warren and Olivia in Aunt Margaret's handwriting. Confused, she called for Warren. They opened the box together on the living room floor. Inside were letters, dozens of them, spanning years. Letters between Margaret and Warren's grandfather, chronicling their friendship. But there were also more recent letters, dated within the last 5 years of Margaret's life, addressed to no one in particular. Warren picked up one and began to read aloud. "I've been thinking about what will happen to the cottage when I'm gone. The house doesn't need to go to just one person. It needs to go to 2 people who will love it the way Charles and I did. 2 people who will see its magic." Olivia reached for another letter. This one made her breath catch. "I've been watching them both from afar. Olivia, my dear niece who comes to visit me, who sees beauty in every flower. And Warren, who sends me Christmas cards every year with updates on his life, honoring his grandfather's memory. They don't know each other, but I think they should. I think this house could bring them together. Call it an old woman's matchmaking, but I believe in the power of this place. Charles and I fell in love here. Perhaps Olivia and Warren will too." Warren's hand found Olivia's. They stared at each other in amazement. "She planned this," Olivia said. "The joint inheritance, the requirement to stay here together. She was trying to set us up." "The crazy thing is," Warren said, a smile playing at his lips, "it's working." They spent the rest of the afternoon reading through Margaret's letters, learning about the love story that had unfolded in this very cottage decades ago. Margaret and Charles had met here by chance, both staying at what was then a bed and breakfast. They'd fallen in love over the course of 2 weeks, married within 6 months, and spent every anniversary at the cottage until Charles passed away. "She wanted that for us," Olivia said softly, holding a photo of Margaret and Charles on their wedding day. They looked radiantly happy. "She believed in love at first sight, in fate bringing people together." Warren pulled Olivia into his arms. "What do you believe?" "I'm starting to believe in it," she admitted. "When I first found out about you, I was so frustrated. I couldn't understand why Aunt Margaret would do this. But now—" She looked up at him. "Now I'm grateful. I wouldn't have met you otherwise. You're completely out of my league." "Hey," Warren said firmly, tilting her chin up. "Don't say that. If anything, you're out of mine. You have this incredible passion and warmth that draws people in. You see beauty everywhere, even in the weeds. You make me want to slow down and actually live life instead of just charging through it." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and Olivia melted into him. They spent the evening on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, talking and kissing as the sun set over the ocean. It felt surreal, like she was living in a dream. The next few days were the happiest of Olivia's life. She and Warren were inseparable, their connection deepening with each conversation, each shared laugh, each kiss. They finished restoring the garden together, working side by side in companionable silence or easy conversation. Warren proved to have a knack for stonework, rebuilding the small wall that bordered the garden path. Olivia planted new flowers, choosing varieties that would bloom at different times throughout the season. In the evenings, they cooked elaborate meals, experimented with cocktails using herbs from the garden, and danced in the living room to music from Warren's phone. He was a surprisingly good dancer, leading her with confidence and grace. Olivia felt cherished in a way she never had before. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Warren grew quiet. "What are you thinking?" Olivia asked, snuggled against his side. "About what happens when we leave here. We live in different cities. You're in Boston, I'm in New York. That's a 4-hour drive." Olivia's stomach tightened. She'd been trying not to think about this. "I know." "I don't want this to end," Warren said firmly. "I know it's fast. I know people will think we're crazy, but Olivia, I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have." Her heart soared. "I'm falling for you too." "I tried not to. I told myself it was just the romance of this place, but Warren, it's more than that. You make me feel seen and valued. You make me laugh. You challenge me. I don't want this to end either." "Then it won't." He turned to face her, taking both her hands. "I mean it. We'll figure out the distance. I can work remotely more often, come to Boston on weekends. You could come to New York. We'll make it work because the alternative is unacceptable." "Okay," Olivia said, tears of happiness blurring her vision. "Yes, we'll make it work." They sealed the promise with a kiss that left them both breathless. On their last morning at the cottage, they woke early to watch the sunrise from the beach. Warren had brought down blankets and thermoses of hot coffee. They sat on the sand, wrapped together against the cool morning air, watching the sky turn from gray to pink to gold. "I have a proposition," Warren said as the sun cleared the horizon. Olivia looked at him. "I'm listening. Keep the cottage. Both of us, don't sell it. Use it as our place, somewhere we can come to get away from the world. And in the meantime, I want to help you start your business." "Warren, no, I can't take your money. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering an investment." You create a business plan, show me you're serious, and I'll provide the startup capital. You pay me back as you start making profit. It's how business works. He touched her face gently. Let me help you achieve your dreams, Olivia. Not because I think you can't do it alone, but because I want to be part of your journey. Let me be your partner in this. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. You really believe in me that much? I believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And I'm going to spend however long it takes proving that to you. She kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. Yes. Okay, partners. They spent their last day at the cottage packing up but also planning. Warren made calls to contacts in Boston who might need landscape design services. Olivia sketched out ideas for her company, which she decided to call Bennett Gardens. They took photos of the restored garden, which would be the centerpiece of her portfolio. As they locked up the cottage that evening, Olivia felt bittersweet. This place had given her so much more than an inheritance. It had given her Warren. We'll be back, Warren promised, as if reading her thoughts. Maybe for the 4th of July, we could invite friends, have a proper summer party. I'd like that. The drive back to Boston should have been sad, but Olivia found herself excited instead. Warren followed her in his car, insisting on making sure her Honda actually made it home. When they arrived at her tiny studio apartment, he helped carry her bags up the 3 flights of stairs. This is cozy, he said diplomatically, looking at the cramped space. Olivia laughed. You can say it's tiny. I know it is, but the rent is cheap and it's close to the garden center. Warren pulled her close. I don't care where you live as long as I get to see you. Speaking of which, I'll be back this Friday. I'm clearing my schedule for the weekend. Really? Really? And Olivia? Start working on that business plan. I'm serious about the investment. That first month was a whirlwind. Warren came to Boston every weekend, and Olivia went to New York twice during the week when Warren had events he wanted her to attend. She met his colleagues, who were surprised but clearly pleased to see their normally serious boss so happy. Warren met her friends, charming them with his easy manner and obvious devotion to Olivia. True to his word, Warren reviewed her business plan and provided seed funding for Bennett Gardens. He also connected her with his network, and Olivia found herself fielding calls from potential clients. By the end of summer, she had quit her part-time job and was working on her own business full-time. Her first major project was designing the rooftop garden for one of Warren's new residential buildings in Boston, a job that led to 3 more commissions. They spent the 4th of July at the cottage, just the 2 of them instead of the party they'd planned. Warren grilled steaks while Olivia made salad from the herbs in the garden. They watched fireworks from the beach, wrapped in blankets, and Olivia thought she'd never been happier. In September, Warren asked her to move in with him in New York. Olivia hesitated, worried about leaving Boston, but Warren reminded her that her business was portable. She could serve clients in both cities, and truthfully, she wanted to be with him. The long-distance relationship was working, but it wasn't the same as falling asleep in his arms every night. The move was easier than she expected. Warren's penthouse in Manhattan was stunning, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a spacious terrace that Olivia immediately claimed for her container garden. She set up a home office in one of the spare bedrooms, and Warren made sure she had everything she needed. But what made the place truly feel like home wasn't the luxury. It was the little things. Warren's suits hanging next to her dresses in the closet. Their toothbrushes side by side in the bathroom. The way he'd leave her coffee in a travel mug when she had early morning site visits. That fall, they returned to the cottage for Thanksgiving. Olivia's parents came, as did Warren's mother. The cottage was filled with laughter and the smell of roasting turkey. Watching Warren charm her parents while helping her mother with the dishes, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with this man. Warren proposed on New Year's Eve at the cottage. They'd driven up despite the snow, wanting to start the new year in the place where their love story began. He'd prepared an elaborate dinner, and as midnight approached, he led her out to the garden they'd restored together. "A year ago, I had no idea this place existed," Warren said, holding both her hands. "I had no idea you existed, and then Margaret's will brought us together and everything changed. You changed me, Olivia. You taught me to slow down, to appreciate beauty, to understand that success isn't just about what you build but who you build it with." He knelt down in the snow, pulling out a ring box. The diamond caught the moonlight, sparkling like the snow around them. "Olivia Bennett, will you marry me? Will you spend the rest of your life with me, here and everywhere else?" "Yes," Olivia said through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married the following summer in the garden at the cottage. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends with the ocean as their backdrop. Olivia wore a simple white dress and carried wild roses from the garden. Warren looked impossibly handsome in his tuxedo, and when he said his vows, his voice broke with emotion. "You are my home," he said. "Wherever you are, that's where I belong." 2 years later, they welcomed their daughter, Margaret Rose, named after the aunt who had brought them together. They split their time between New York and the cottage, which they expanded to accommodate their growing family. Warren scaled back his hours at Thorne Industries, taking on a partner so he could focus more on design work and spend more time with Olivia and their daughter. Bennett Gardens thrived. Olivia hired a small team and took on increasingly prestigious projects. She designed public parks, corporate campuses, and private estates. But her favorite project was always the cottage garden, which she continued to expand and refine each summer. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they sat on the porch of the cottage, watching little Margaret play in the garden. The roses were in full bloom, their scent carried on the sea breeze. "You ever think about how different our lives would be if Aunt Margaret hadn't left us this place?" Olivia asked, leaning against Warren's shoulder. Warren wrapped his arm around her, pressing a kiss to her hair. "All the time. I think about how close I came to missing out on this, on you, on our family." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "Your aunt was a wise woman. She knew exactly what she was doing." "The property proved our love," Olivia said softly, echoing a line from one of Margaret's letters. "That's what she wrote, that this place would prove whether we were meant to be together." "It did more than that," Warren said. "It created our love. It gave us the time and space to really see each other without all the noise of the outside world. This cottage is the foundation of everything we've built." Little Margaret toddled over, holding up a flower she'd picked. "Pretty," she announced proudly. Warren scooped her up, settling her between them on the porch swing. Olivia's heart swelled as she watched her husband and daughter, their heads close together as Warren taught Margaret the names of the different flowers. This was happiness, she thought. Not the fairy tale version with perfect moments and grand gestures, but the real, deep, abiding joy that came from building a life with someone who saw you, loved you, challenged you. The cottage had been the catalyst, yes, but what she and Warren had created together was so much more than that initial spark. As the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Olivia sent a silent thank you to Aunt Margaret. The cottage had proven their love, yes, but more importantly, it had given them the chance to find each other in the first place. 3 years later, they welcomed their son, Charles Warren, and the cottage rang with even more laughter. Warren left Thorne Industries entirely, starting a smaller boutique firm that focused exclusively on historic preservation and sustainable design. He worked from home most days, which meant more time with the family. Olivia's business had grown beyond her wildest dreams. She'd been featured in design magazines and had won several prestigious awards. But her favorite moments weren't the accolades. They were the quiet evenings at the cottage, teaching her children how to plant seeds and care for growing things, just as Aunt Margaret had taught her. Sometimes, on summer nights, she and Warren would walk down to the beach after the children were asleep. They'd sit on the sand, holding hands, listening to the waves, and marveling at how a simple inheritance had transformed into a lifetime of love. "I'm grateful every single day," Warren told her on one of those nights, his thumb rubbing circles on her hand. "For this place, for you, for our family. I've built skyscrapers and shopping centers, but this," he gestured at the cottage glowing softly in the darkness, "this is my greatest achievement, this life we've created together." Olivia kissed him, tasting salt air and happiness. "Mine too." The cottage stood watch over them, over their family, over the love story it had helped create. And if sometimes, in the garden's quiet moments, Olivia felt Aunt Margaret's presence in the whisper of the sea breeze through the roses, she knew it was just her aunt's way of saying she'd been right all along. The property had proven their love, and their love had brought the property back to life. It was a perfect circle, a beautiful story that would continue for generations to come. As they walked back up to the cottage that night, hand in hand, Olivia looked back at the ocean one more time. The moonlight danced on the waves, and she could have sworn she heard the faint sound of laughter on the wind. Not scary or sad, but joyful, celebratory. As if two old souls were looking down at what they'd helped create and were thoroughly pleased with themselves. And maybe they were. Maybe Margaret and Charles were somewhere together, watching their matchmaking scheme come to fruition in ways more beautiful than even they had imagined. Whatever the truth, Olivia knew one thing for certain. She would be forever grateful to the aunt who had loved her enough to give her not just an inheritance but a future, a partner, a family, a home. The cottage lights glowed warm and welcoming as they climbed the steps to the porch. Tomorrow they'd wake up to the sound of their children's laughter, to coffee and pancakes and sandy feet tracking through the kitchen. They'd spend the day on the beach, building sandcastles and collecting shells. Warren would teach Charles how to skip stones while Olivia helped Margaret look for tide pools. They'd have a cookout for dinner, and afterward, they'd all pile onto the porch swing for stories before bedtime. It was an ordinary life in many ways, but it was also extraordinary in all the ways that mattered. And it had all started with an unexpected inheritance and a stranger who became the love of her life. The cottage had proven their love, yes, but more than that, it had given them a place to build it, to nurture it, to watch it grow and flourish like the garden that surrounded them. As Warren locked the door behind them and pulled her close for one more kiss, Olivia smiled against his lips. This was home, not just the cottage, but him, their family, the life they'd created together, and she wouldn't change a single thing,